Good afternoon, Aina. How are you today? I hope all is well.
Good afternoon. I'm doing well, thank you. How about you?
I'm doing well too. Thank you for asking. First of all, I want to apologize that we couldn't meet in person today as an urgent matter arose and needed my urgent attention. However, I understand that this is an important matter for you, so I have set up a virtual meeting for us to go through the details and issues. I'll do my very best to assist you now.
I appreciate that. It's perfectly fine. I'm just glad we are able to meet, even if it's virtually.
Thank you so much for understanding, Aina. From our previous conversation that we had via phone call, I was able to gather some important details about your situation. I understand you're looking to purchase a bungalow in Kuala Terengganu from Sofia Binti Ismail, and you have several concerns regarding the transaction between the two of you. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. I have been facing a couple of issues, and I would like to make sure everything is handled properly before we moving forward.
All right, I understand, Aina. Today's meeting is to dive deeper into those issues and to see how we can best address them. Before we proceed, I want to confirm that I will be acting in your best interest throughout this process. I am here to protect your rights and ensure that everything goes smoothly with this transaction. If you have any concerns or questions about the procedure at any point, please don't hesitate to let me know.
That sounds great. I am glad to have your support on this, and thank you for making time for me today.
Not a problem at all, Aina. Let's dive right in. First of all, I understand that there is a restriction in interest on the land in question. From what I've gathered, the property you're intending to purchase has a condition that requires the consent of the land administrator of Kuala Terengganu before the property can be transferred, charged, or even leased out. This restriction means that the transfer of the property from the seller, Sophia, to yourself, Aina, cannot proceed until formal consent is obtained from the land administrator. It is a procedural requirement that can affect the timeline of the sale, potentially leading to delays. Would you like me to explain further about the procedure or guide you on how we can go about obtaining the necessary consent?
I am not entirely sure what it means. I have read about this restriction, but I don't know exactly how it will affect the sale. So could you explain it to me?
Certainly, Aina. A restriction in interest like this means that before Sophia can sell or transfer ownership of the land to you, she must first obtain approval from the land administrator. This approval process can take time, and it is essential that we factor it into the sale timeline. In your case, the sale cannot proceed until the consent is given. However, the good news is that as long as we follow the procedure and submit the necessary applications, it is usually just a matter of time before the approval is granted by the land administrator.
Oh, okay. So does that mean that the sale cannot happen without the land administrator's approval?
That is exactly right, Aina. The transfer will not be legally valid without the administrator's consent. However, this is not something to be too concerned about. In practice, we will draft the sale and purchase agreement, also known as the SPA, to reflect this, and the sale will proceed once the consent is granted. Your remaining payment after the deposit will be due within 3 months of that consent approval. Does that timeline work for you, or do you need more or less time?
I think that works, and I just want to be sure if there won't be any delays.
Regarding the delays, I'll make sure that we handle the application for consent properly, so we should be able to avoid unnecessary delays. Now, Let's move on to the second issue in hand regarding the uh, sale and purchase, which is the private caveat on the property. From what you've told me, there's an existing caveat lodged by a third party who could have been possibly Sophia's estranged siblings claiming ownership over part of the property. Have you had any more information regarding this caveat?
Yes, Sophia mentioned this during our discussions. I'm a little concerned because I have never dealt with anything like this before.
That is very understandable, Aina. A private caveat is essentially a notice lodged with the land office that someone else has a legal claim on the property, and it can prevent the transfer of ownership until the issue is resolved. However, just because a caveat has been launched doesn't necessarily mean it's a valid claim. The first step I recommend in removing the caveat is having a conversation with Sophia herself. It is very important to understand the nature of this caveat and why her siblings has lodged it. Sometimes these matters can be personal, and if Sophia is willing, she might be able to negotiate with her siblings directly to have the caveat withdrawn. This could save time and effort. Does that make sense so far, or do you have any other questions?
Uh, yes, that makes sense. But Sophia has not given me much detail, so just that it's a family issue, and she's confident it will be resolved soon. So she said it won't be a problem for the sale. But what if Sophia cannot convince her sibling to withdraw it?
Well, that's actually a very good question, Aina. If a friendly resolution doesn't work, the next option is for Sophia to formally request the withdrawal of the caveat. This would be done by submitting Form 19G, which is a notice to withdraw a private caveat. If Sophia's siblings agrees, this would clear the way for your purchase without any further obstacles.
And what happens if they don't agree to withdraw it voluntarily?
If that's the case, then we can take a more formal approach. Either you or Sophia could apply to the land registrar for the caveat to be cancelled. This is done by way of submitting Form 19H. The registrar would then notify the caveator, which in this case is one of Sophia's siblings, and they would have 2 months to respond. However, if they don't take action within that time, the caveat will automatically lapse. This is a relatively straightforward process.
And what if the sibling objects and responds within the 2 months?
That's the thing where that if that happens, things will become more complicated and complex. If the siblings object or if there are ongoing disputes regarding the land, the final option to resolve this would be litigation. You may need to apply to the court under Section 327 of the National Land Code to have the caveat removed. This it would involve filing an originating summons and submitting supporting affidavits to show that you have a legitimate interest in purchasing the property. This is typically the last resort as it can be time consuming and costly, but it is sometimes absolutely necessary if the caveator is determined to maintain the caveat.
Oh, I see. Hopefully it doesn't come to that. But it's good to know all the options. Thanks for explaining everything so clearly.
No problem, Aina. We'll need to address this before the sale can proceed smoothly. I'll draft a request to the land office for clarification on the status of the caveat and whether it's currently affecting the transfer of the property. We can't proceed with the sale until we know the caveat is either removed or resolved. Let's now move on to the next issue in hand, which is the dispute over fixtures between you and Sophia. You mentioned that Sophia wants to remove some of the fixtures, like the kitchen cabinets, built in wardrobes, and the lighting. But you believe they should be included in the purchase. Can you tell me more about this dispute and why you think so?
Um, yes, when I first saw the property, I was under the impression that all the built-in fixtures, like the kitchen cabinets, the wardrobes, and lights, would be part of the deal. But Sophia said she wants to take them with her because they are personal items. So I'm worried that this could cause issues if they are not included in the purchase price.
Well, that is true. It's important that we clarify what is and isn't included in the sale to avoid any potential misunderstandings down the line. As a general rule, anything that is fixed or attached to the property, for example, the built in wardrobes, the kitchen cabinets, and the lighting fixtures in this example, is typically considered as part of the property. These items should remain unless they are specifically excluded in the sale and purchase agreement. What I recommend is that we create a detailed list of all the fixtures and fittings you want to remain with the property, and we will ensure that this list is included in the SPA. By specifying these items, we protect your interests and ensure that Sophia cannot remove them later without your express consent. Does this approach sound agreeable to you?
Yes, that sounds reasonable. And I would like to have everything in writing so there are no issues after the purchase.
Great. I'll make sure to include those details in the SPA. Now let's discuss the last issue at hand, which is the unpaid quit rent. You mentioned there's an outstanding quit rent of Ringgit Malaysia 1000 on the property. Are you aware of whether this amount has been paid or whether it is still due by Sophia?
Well, Sophia mentioned that she has not paid it yet, but she promised to settle it before the sale goes through. So I'm not sure if she has taken care of it yet. Is there an issue if she hasn't made the payment yet?
Well, Aina, in simple words, quit rent is a government levy on the land, and it is very important that an outstanding amount is paid before the sale is finalized. We will need to ensure this is settled before we proceed. I can help you verify the outstanding amount and make sure it has been cleared up either by Sophia or by you as part of the sale.
I don't want to inherit any of her debt, so I would prefer if she clears it before the sale is completed.
That is very true, Aina. We can include a clause in the SPA that requires Sophia to settle the quit rent before the transfer takes place. This way, you won't be held responsible for any unpaid quit rent after the SPA has been signed.
That works for me. Now, about the deposit, there's a bit of disagreement between me and Sophia about how it should be handled. So she wants it paid directly to her, but I would prefer to have it placed in a stakeholder account to protect both of our interests.
Well, it is a common practice to place deposits in a stakeholder's account as it ensures the money is protected until the sale goes through. This way, neither parties, the seller or the buyer, can access the funds until all conditions are met. I would strongly recommend we include this in the SPA to ensure that the deposit is held by a neutral third party, like a law firm or an escrow agent. However, if Sophia insists on receiving the deposit directly, we can negotiate on the terms and make sure there are safeguards in place to ensure that she can't misuse the deposit before the sale goes through.
I'm glad to hear you say that. I definitely want the deposit protected.
Rest assured, Aina, I'll make sure the deposit is handled securely. I'll also make sure the SPA addresses all of these issues so there won't be any confusion between the both of you during the sale or after the sale. Is there anything else you'd like to discuss or clarify before we move forward with drafting the SPA?
No, I think we've covered everything. Thank you so much for your help.
You're welcome, Aina. I'll get started on drafting the SPA and addressing these issues. I'll keep you updated on each step or whether I get a response from any parties regarding the issues at hand, and we will ensure that everything is in order for the sale. If anything comes up in the meantime, feel free to reach out to me to clarify any of your doubts.
Thank you. I really appreciate your support.